Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call us to order at 6:36. And then we roll call attendance. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So Shama, if you don't mind just going through and
Yeah, I don't mind. However, my computer is fried apparently, and I'm doing this through the phone. So roll call. I actually don't know who is on.
You can't see us?
Can you see our names on our windows?
Yeah. Oh, but it isn't like calling attendance. It's
No,
just.
you can just say our names as you can see them on the windows, and we'll say.
Oh, okay.
Here.
All right. Calling to order at 6:37. Natalie Selly.
Here.
If I'm pronouncing that correctly. Okay. Debbie Braun.
Here.
JC Herman.
here.
Dr. Patricia A. Altheum.
FEM.
Hi, sorry, apologies. Elaine Siegel.
Here.
And hey, Martha Gaines.
Here. Hi, Shama.
Hi, nice to see you.
You too.
So
Okay.
the only other thing that you would need to note is that Ida Nolan is a committee member and she's not present.
Okay, then I'm Nolan, not present. I will simply try to take notes this way.
I just wrote me back, said she got her second shot and she's not feeling good. So she won't be joining us tonight.
Okay. Tell her we hope she feels better.
I will.
Thank God she got her second shot.
Yeah, that too. It doesn't look like there's anyone here for citizen comments. And approval of the meeting minutes from last meeting.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last, I don't have the date. From the
March
last
18th.
March 18th REDI committee meeting.
I'll second that motion. Natalie Salee.
And then do we all vote on that, correct?
Yeah, and then Shama, when you're ready, if you want to do a roll call again. And you don't have to include Dr. Effiam in the roll call.
Okay. So I would be calling for who seconds it.
No, you call everybody who's going to vote on it.
Okay. Thank you for bearing with me, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. That's what this is for today. We're figuring it out. So you'll note that Debbie Braun made the motion to approve the March 18th minutes, and then Natalie Salee made a second. And then you'll just go through and call our names again, and we'll all vote either yes or no.
Okay. Seconds. All right. And then, so JC Herman,
Yes.
approve. Is that okay?
Yes.
And then Elaine Siegel, do you approve?
Approved. Yes.
Martha Gaines, do you approve of the motion?
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. Yes.
All right. I'll have approved meeting minutes from March 18th.
And Shama, you can call myself and Debbie too, even though we made the motion in a second.
Okay. And Natalie Sully, do you approve?
Yes.
And Debbie Braun, do you approve?
I'm not sure that you should ask if you approve, because that's kind of set in the, it's just, people are just voting yes or no. Am I right?
Yeah.
Oh, so it just says the name.
For you, you can just say the name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Just to make it simple.
And Shama, just so you know, I'm learning along with you. And I have to say I'm enjoying your company right now, because I also am not sure. I'm not sure how all this goes. So I appreciate you being here.
Oh,
Makes me
you should
feel
go
better.
karaokeing with me sometime. I promise. I will make you feel great about yourself.
I won't leave.
I am very bad at everything I do, but I do it with gusto.
Yeah, I would do karaoke with gusto. Okay. So on to old business. So we're going to finish up the recommended equity policy, which includes the charter and the equity lens.
JC, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. We have to also vote on the March 4th minutes.
Oh,
Remember,
All right, I'll make another-
the agenda.
thank you. That is not in the agenda. I missed that when I put the agenda together.
No, it was tabled.
I think it's there. I thought I was looking.
Am
at
I
it.
looking at the wrong, don't have the most recent copy of the agenda?
It's in the one that I sent you.
Okay, you know
I
what?
updated it and emailed it to you.
You did, and that is clearly not the one I'm looking at. I apologize. Let me go to the proper one. Thank you. I was very confused. Thank you for pointing that out.
It's okay.
So do we vote on those or we do not?
Yes.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from March 4th.
Thank
Second.
you. I, for some reason, can't find them. Find the other.
I can send it to you again.
All right, so let it be seen, let it be recognized that Debbie Braun motions to approve the minutes from March 4th, 2021.
And who seconded it?
I did.
Elaine.
Oh, Elaine did.
And Natalie Selly seconds the motion. JC Herman?
Yes.
Okay. Elaine Siegel?
Yes, but I seconded the motion.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay.
And Martha Gaines?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes,
Did I miss someone?
yes.
Debbie? Oh, I have to ask Debbie again. Right. Natalie and Debbie, right? Debbie?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, Shama, you can probably make yourself a little like cheat sheet of just the names of the people who are on the committee, and that way, if you're because I know from mobile, it's annoying to have to like scroll through the participants. So you can just keep a sheet handy, and that way every single meeting you just read down the list, and of course you'll get to know everybody who's on the committee. And Aiden would be here, would be voting if she were here. And then Dr. Effiam is our consultant, so she is, always with us for the foreseeable future, always part of the discussion, but not a voting member of the committee.
Okay. I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it has, let it be recognized that the minutes from March 4th have been approved.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and you don't even have to say that. The roll call vote is because we're virtual. If we were meeting under normal conditions, there are some things, Natalie, you can maybe help me out with this, that might require a roll call vote just inherent to the business being discussed. But otherwise, normally it's a vote of, aye. And it's done all at once, where it's all in favor, aye, and everybody just says it at once. In order to keep things just a little bit more carefully recorded, the governor recommended that all votes, even to adjourn the meeting, so it's a little silly, but all votes we take when we're meeting virtually like this, we roll call each vote, just so that we can make sure that we record each individual vote instead of just assuming that we heard things correctly.
Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. The next matter of business would that be citizen comments?
Wait, but you don't, yeah.
I'm
I'll,
not sure how.
It's okay. You don't have to worry about that. So JC's the chair. So she's going to walk us through the whole agenda. All you have to do is note who makes a motion, who seconds it, and then call all of our names, and we'll say yes or no, and then just document that. That's really it right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank God.
And then we'll talk about, like, I sent you the template that I had made from the March 18th minutes. So we
Which
can talk about that separately, but it's just like major talking points. But for right now, all you have to worry about is notating motion, second, and then calling all of our names.
Okay.
Super easy.
Thanks.
Got it.
And something I do sometimes in the normal board meeting for Julie, our minute taker, is I'll sort of, she knows because she's been doing this a long time, but sometimes I will cue her to take our roll call vote, because then she knows exactly when everybody's kind of done and we're ready to move to the vote. More often than not, she already knows when it's time to do it. But we can do that for you, Shama, if you want, so that you don't have to
Well,
automatically
let's
know.
let JC do that since she's the chairman. Let's let her do all of that.
I'll
Yeah.
do it. And then when I
I'm
forget,
sorry,
please
that's
remind
what I
me.
meant, because I'm
Yeah.
talking about when
Yeah.
I'm president.
I don't think
Yeah.
I think Natalie will probably go through all this with Shama. I don't
Well,
think we
yes.
need to take up a lot of time in the meeting explaining every
Yeah.
thing.
So JC,
Well, and-
you know what I'm talking about,
This-
right? In the board
this can
meetings,
be
when
an
I'll
email.
sometimes say, Julie, if you'll roll call vote for us. And
Yes.
then, as soon as she calls the last name, Shama, it's like we just kind of flow into whoever's running the meeting. So me in the board meetings, JC in these meetings, she'll just kind of like take over running the rest of it.
Okay, cool.
Sorry to just throw you in, but it's
No, it's all
Okay,
right.
let's-
I mean,
You're doing great. Take it, Jen.
All right, next order of business is recommending the equity policy, including the charter and equity lens. We need to have that finalized. There is a reminder, because it's been so long. We had some edits and such that Natalie did that we wanted to do some final approval on. And then I also created a Google form that has the questions along with them. Natalie, do you want to screen share the final version that you have?
Sure. Let me pull it up. Hold on. JC, if you have it handy, it might be easier for you to do it because it's in my Dropbox. Hold on. Well, I might be able to find it in my sent mail.
I'm sorry this is all taking so long. I mean, I have the form pulled up right now. Should we start with that since I have that?
I've got the.
You
Hold
have
on.
it?
I'm gonna share.
Okay.
Nope, not that. Okay. Can you guys see it this way? Can you see what's on my screen?
Huh?
You can?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I put it into two documents as we discussed. So this is the, I need to spell racial correctly at the top here. But this is the equity policy and the charter.
Hey, Natalie,
Mm-hmm.
do you mind hitting where it says 100%? See if you can make that a little bit bigger. I don't want it to like make it go off the screen, but yeah, that's great. Maybe even one more if it, that takes it off the screen. So maybe one less. That's awesome. Makes it easier to read.
I might be able to just download it too. Hold on.
Did we lose Natalie?
Oh, it looks like we did. She must have, she said she was trying to download and, oh, she just texted me that her computer restarted itself. So
Okay.
she'll rejoin us.
Okay. Let me see if I have screen sharing. I don't.
Well, you know what? I think a message popped up for me that said Dr. Effium is the host now. I don't know if that means she can pass that host
She
capability.
can.
to you. She can.
That's
Okay.
right. I forgot that's what happens. Yeah, when the host gets kicked out, someone else gets made the host.
Oh, so what do you need me to do as host?
Can you please share screen sharing capabilities? I can at least pull up the equity form. I have it right now, so you guys,
Yes.
you all don't have to wait.
Yes, I'm doing that right now.
Thank you.
Casey.
So the form, I put the form together on a Google Forms, so it can be printed as a PDF and filled out by hand. But if it gets filled out digitally, we have the capability to go back and search, which I thought would be a really helpful thing to do over time. We can, make it easier for us to check up on ourselves. And then I think I added, Dr. Effium, I still don't have, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why I can't give it to you, but hang on.
It might be because Natalie's not here.
Yeah, it's not allowing me to give you share capability. What I can do is pull up the form.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, hold on. I've got to go to my email to do that.
I added a last question on the end that was like, I forget exactly what words are on there. We'll see, but it's something along the lines of like reflection, update, so that, anytime that form gets filled out, or reflection, I think it would be a great idea that anytime that form gets filled out after a certain amount of time, we go back and revisit that and see how things went. So we, learn what we did well and figure out what we need to do better. But other than that, it's word for word, the edited questions that Natalie finished into the Google Forms.
We're not supposed to be seeing it right now, right?
That's correct.
No. Okay.
I'm pulling it up.
Just making sure that I was seeing the right thing.
All right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
And if Natalie wants to spruce it up, you can like put pictures and backgrounds. I didn't worry about any of that stuff. I just literally, I got the questions in here. I think one question that I have for you all is, initially when I put this form together, I split out the questions. So for example, this one that says, are there potential disparities? I put the if so part on a different line, so that you could have more space and more like you could actually.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You cut out that whole time for me. I don't know if you did for everybody else as well. Did you
About
guys
the question, how I laid the questions out?
You were just frozen, so I couldn't hear anything from when you first started talking about how Natalie can add stuff if she wants to. That was the last thing I heard.
Okay, so the part that you missed is when the first time that I put the form together, I split out the questions so that each box only had one question in it. And I initially did that because I wanted all the questions to be attended to, right? Like I didn't want just that first question to get read and answered and that second one get skipped. But when I left it that way, when you print it, the numbering goes off of what the numbering in the charter is. And I think that's very confusing. So I left it like this. And that's the only question that I have for all of you in terms of I personally kind of like having the questions separate so they're like, you can't miss each one, but I think that numbering is really important. Other than that, the questions are exactly the same.
I agree with you that you don't want to skip any questions, but I also agree with you that it shouldn't be super inconsistent between the two different forms. So I don't really have an immediate preference on how to fix that, but I don't want to see the inconsistency. So you're saying even though these aren't numbered, if you print this, it numbers them?
It does.
Okay.
It
I
does.
mean,
When you pull it up as a PDF, each question gets numbered, and then there's a series of lines underneath each one.
Okay. I mean, an easy way to keep this as you've created it would be to just reformat the questions.
We talked about that at the last meeting, and we
Yeah.
decided we didn't want to do that in.
Well, that's because we were trying to talk about whether there would be like sub questions, you know, 1A, 1B. If we literally went with just a consecutive list, question 1, question 2, question 3, even though some of those questions are follow-ups to the questions before them, it would allow for just consistency of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many. I mean, it's a small point, so I don't want to be the cause of like talking about it too much, but I do see what you're saying isn't ideal, that there would be this like, I mean, although is it gonna be, you know, it seems like it should still be pretty obvious to people that these are the same lists of questions, just that they're slightly differently formatted, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you know, I'm all this stuff that's going to be more permanent. I'm trying to keep in mind. I'm looking at it from the point of view that we are not going to be the ones using these documents. You know what I mean? Like they need to be solid and clear. You know, when we went through last time about whether or not to split up the questions, at least from my recollection, I feel like we had some really solid reasoning as to why not to do that. Which is why I landed on it this way. I don't know if anyone else has, you know, an opinion or if it even really matters all that much.
I mean, some of the time, I don't have the whole thing in front of me all at once, but when we say, are there potential disparities related to this policy, blah, 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 if so, what are they? I mean, to me, I always like things to be concise and inclusive instead of needlessly duplicative. So to me, saying something like, what are any potential disparities? That, you know, and then you don't need the follow-up question of if so, what are they? I mean, it's kind of like, you know, the whole reason we're asking is because there probably are. If there are none, then you write none. But it's not like you're going to write yes and not answer what they are. The whole like point of the question is what are they? Not are there any? Yes or no. It's more what are they, you know? So like I said, I don't know if that's going to be easily applied to the other questions, but it would possibly eliminate the need for these like follow-up questions. Does that make sense?
yes.
But I don't mean to go backwards because I think we talked about this quite a bit last time.
We did talk about it a lot.
Welcome back.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, my computer shut itself down.
It took me a while to realize that you were missing because I was still looking for the document.
I'm trying to get it pulled up on my computer so I can do that without getting.
Okay.
Will you stop sharing?
Oh, we can finish. We can continue talking about this since JC has it pulled up.
And also, just in the meantime, will you make sure you have screen sharing? And then if you don't, let's fix that now. Does anyone else have, like, again, right? Like I very much see what Martha's saying. The wordsmithing would eliminate those second questions. We went through this in pretty great detail last time, so I'm reluctant to go back and like wordsmith everything again.
May I make a
Leave
comment?
it like it is, and then if there's a problem, which I doubt there will be, we can go back and why don't we just, I mean, this is just
And
such
see how
a
it goes.
small point to
Um,
continue discussing, I think.
I agree with that. Before we go away from it, can I make one recommendation
Please.
or observation? Are there potential disparities related to this policy? You took out the word group. I thought we were going to put in racial, but you have to have something in there to direct people to understand that we're looking particularly at racial disparities. So if you want to leave in the word group and define group at some point, but as you said, there are going to be others who are using this. Let's say a board member is using this and it says, are there potential disparities related to policy practice? What does that mean? So what are the potential racial disparities related?
Can't you just put racial in there? Just add.
You can, yes, as long as you need something to define that, so we don't get into, hearing problems or veterans, because right now you're focused on the group disparity, and at this point it's racial.
Yeah, that's a major point. Thank you for that, Dr. Effiam. I think that's, obviously something that we should put back in there. And then, if we said, like you just said, what are the potential racial disparities?
Yes.
Then you don't have to have, if so, what are they? What are the potential racial disparities?
Okay, real fast, because JC took this directly from the racial equity lens that we edited together last time. So I just want to make sure that I'm documenting this so I can update that document too. So we're looking at the racial equity lens questions. And number 2, you want to change it to what are the potential disparities? Is that correct?
What are the potential racial disparities related to this policy, practice, program, or decision?
Got it. Thank you.
And another part that's important, if it's phrased this way, if so, what are they? No, we know they're going to be, and we want people to know up front, yet identify what potential racial disparities are, as opposed to say no, because we won't have those people at the table at that point.
So the word racial should be in front of disparities throughout all of these questions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to suggest too, I forgot to say this last time. If we're going to say policy, practice, program, decision like 14 different times, we may want to note in the beginning that we're going to abbreviate with a capital PPPD and not spell it out a million times, just because it will cut down on the text a great deal. It's not a huge deal, but especially when you're kind of reading it or saying it. So I don't know if people agree with that, but it's just a way to cut down on the wordiness of the questions, because those 4 words don't have to be spelled out every time. So
okay. Is that something that everybody wants me to do? You want me to update that in the questions?
if people disagree, it's fine. I just thought I would throw it out there.
I could go either way. I think at this point, I like seeing it written out while we get accustomed to it. And then, like Debbie said, I think that we can make any changes moving forward. If we get to a point where we're going through it and we want it to be, a little quicker to read, we can make that adjustment later. Because I think eventually, we're going to end up, using a lot of acronyms in replace of that.
If we're going to ask what are the potential racial disparities, then the second sentence needs to come out.
I took it out.
Oh, it's still on the screen.
Yeah, we're on.
You guys aren't looking at my screen. You're looking at JP's. I've got the actual lens that we're going to be turning into the board. But do you want me to share my screen instead?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I'll stop sharing, but I think what Elaine is talking about is question 3. What groups may experience these disparities? So it's actually about question 3 on the screen. This one.
Oh, I thought she was referring to if so, what are they?
No, she said with these, I think, Elaine, correct me if I'm wrong, if we are asking the question here, what are the racial disparities, right, then this question needs to come out. Is that what you were referring to, Elaine?
No, I was referring to the second one.
Okay, you were referring
Potential
to.
racial disparities. Then we need to take out, if so, what are there? What
Yes.
are they?
Correct.
I cut that on the document.
You cut that on your document.
I
Okay.
did. Yep.
I'm going to stop sharing so you can share, okay?
Okay. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So in number 2, I changed it to what are the potential racial disparities? And then for there was another.
Natalie, do you mind making that text a little bit bigger? Probably under view. That's great.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I added in to question 5 because it referred to disparities again. So I added racial before that as well. Are there any other changes that we wanted to make?
The only other thing that I would like to see on there is that like reflection piece. Right? Like these are the first 8 steps that we take, and then there's the part we have to go back and revisit what we did. Like if we just do it and walk away, how are we supposed to know if we did what we were supposed to?
Is that subsumed though under 8? Among the next steps and how it'll be advanced?
I see the reflection of like assessing how those steps, like how it went. Were they implemented well? Were they effective? It's those steps that I think that we need to go back and reflect upon.
JC, do you have a suggestion on how you want to incorporate that into this?
Maybe even, like Martha brought up, I think it was Martha brought up the idea of like, like having a date, like maybe, setting a date to review.
Like a 6-month review?
Right.
Okay, can I jump in here?
Yes, please.
So no, we don't want to do that.
No? Okay.
So right now we're developing the lens. We will have extensive training in how to use this lens.
Okay.
So what happens when you have the lens is right now I want to know, hey, what is the policy you all are going to review? What policy are we talking about? And so the board would say, we're talking about putting in skate parks. What are the potential racial disparities? They have to, the goal for the person looking at this is to go and identify those disparities, which means the whole point of a racial equity lens is to engage the very people that will be impacted by it. So let's say in this case, let's just say we're talking about a skate park, and let's skip racial for a minute. We're talking about a skate park, and in that skate park, potentially senior citizens could be impacted. So then you have to take that information and go and convene senior citizen focus groups or do a survey of senior citizens. But the whole point is to get that information from them. The point of the racial equity lens is simply to capture who are the groups we need to contact. So there once you do the racial equity assessment here, then there will be a piece that comes back and says, how will we be impacted? How will we, based on the data we've now collected from these groups who might be impacted, this is how we will change the policy. This is how we will adapt to that. So we recognize now that senior citizens might be affected. We're gonna, and as we talk to them, they say, yeah, that's really noisy for me. It's very difficult for me to hear my TV when that's happening. And then so we've collected that data, and then the resolution is to put in soundboards. So it's a whole process.
would it be appropriate to add to follow back up with the community after the policies were changed? Or is that just kind of a part of the process that we would be doing then?
That's a part of the process that you will be
Okay.
doing.
Okay.
So once we get the questions down, then, like I said, there'll be extensive training in how we use this, how we apply this. This should come back to it should come back to the committee. The committee should be able to look over it and help. So yes, there's a whole
Okay.
process for this.
Okay, that's the piece that I want to make sure gets done, that I don't see in this yet, but clearly I haven't been through the training. The idea of looking back at what we've done to make sure that we did what we said we were going to do, we did it well, right? Like any mistakes that we made, we can learn from them and all that. So
And that's why you want to keep it separate
awesome.
from this lens.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
The lens simply lays out what you should be doing, and then you go back and look and evaluate. The committee will come back and look and evaluate all the forms together over the course of 6 months or a year and say, we did convene focus groups. They did reach out to the Black community. Here's how they did that. And so then you do that evaluation piece.
Okay, that feels really good. All right, other than that, that's the only suggestion I had.
Did anybody else have any revisions they wanted me to make or edits?
Can you go back to the questions for a second? Pat, I have a question for you.
Okay.
With number 3, we're saying what groups could experience racial disparities, and then how will they be engaged in this process? And it seems like in real time, that's the point when we would be engaging with those groups, if not before that, in order to go to number 4. And then number 4 is like still subjunctive, as though we're not talking to those people. How could the policy affect those groups? How could it be perceived by them? I thought we talked about the fact that we will be engaged with them at that point. So it's not really a could. I mean, I'm sorry to harp on like a formatting of the grammar there, but it seems like we should be asking and would be asking, how does the policy, practice, etc., affect the groups? How is it perceived by the groups? Because again, aren't we talking to them at that point?
Yes, that's all correct.
Okay, so should we go ahead and go with how does and how is it perceived?
Yes.
But does this, that kind of brings into question the process, does this contemplate an initial discussion, if the people aren't at the table, the affected group, if they're not yet at the table, if they have yet to be engaged, before we do that, are we doing a pre-analysis, anticipating what the possibilities would be, so that we go into that dialogue in a way that's informed?
Can you say that again, Elaine? I'm sorry.
Sure. The way that it's drafted right now, the affected groups may or may not be engaged in the process, but it's anticipated that this issue is initially coming up, as I'm reading it, as it's framed right now. These issues regarding or the new policy or practice or program is coming before us, and we're considering what the potential racial disparities are and what have you. Now, before we engage other people, if they're not already engaged, it seems to me that the way that the questions are framed, and I see it as being positive, it contemplates that we're going to be reviewing ourselves and educating ourselves, or anticipating what the possible problems are before we sit down. If people aren't already there, before we take that further step, we're going to do some examination and some reflection. At that stage, we're not going to wait for the larger process.
Elaine?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Would
Yeah.
that, I hear what you're saying. I'm wondering if that's solved by updating this question to how are they being engaged, or how something that assumes that they are currently being engaged in this process,
Well,
rather than wondering how we will do it and then having to,
but are they?
decide amongst ourselves how it's going to be affecting them.
Do we want to take a look at it before they may or may not be engaged, okay, at that point, and it depends on what the policy or the practice is, and how that comes to us. If they're engaged, then I don't think that there's a question here. But if they haven't been engaged yet, before we do that, it seems to me that we would benefit from some reflection, before we move on, some reflection as to what the potentials are. And I don't see it as an either or, but at the outset of the process, I don't. It seems to me like we might be saying, well, we'll stick our head in the sand and let somebody come and point out the problems, rather than doing the work ourselves of trying to anticipate what they might be, so that we walk into the dialogue prepared for it.
Well, this is, I think, a really fundamental question, Elaine, and I've kind of tried to ask this, but I didn't even really know how to ask it. But I remember Dr. Effiam saying, and Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to racial equity, it's not really our place to be answering these questions on behalf of people who are different races than we are. And that is obviously sort of at the basis of why we engage with them and allow them to answer these questions. And at the same time, I see Elaine's point, which is that we absolutely need to be thinking about others and trying to get ahead of problems that could happen, and not sticking our head in the sand and assuming that everything is all good until we hear otherwise. So I don't really know how to reconcile the two things that I just tried to articulate, if that makes any sense. It's like,
well, let me help. Let me help. So let's just assume that it is, again, I'm enjoying the skate park one. So the question that gets posed is, what is the policy? And the question that gets answered is, hey, we're talking about a skate park. The next question that gets answered is, hey, how will this potentially impact this is an internal question still. How will this potentially impact Black people? Right? We're assuming, we have to assume up front. That's why we're doing racial equities, because we know that we don't have a lot of participation. So we have to say, well, it could affect, Black teens, Black seniors. That just simply gives us the list to which we want to center focus groups on. We want to then see, do we have Black seniors engaged in this process? Do we have Black youth engaged in this process? The answer is no. So let's get some focus groups going, or let's survey, however. So that's simple. That question is simply meant for us to understand, who do we need to be talking to? I'm assuming there are no Black seniors at the table. That's a question to be answered. Once we determine, oh, we should talk to seniors, we should talk to youth, we should talk to whatever, then that's when we've convened them. So this is not a sit down and answer all 7 questions or 8 questions in one sitting. This is, we know this could potentially impact this group. So let's go talk to those groups and see if they are at the table, because we have no clue. And that would be anybody. Simply by looking, we will not know if they're present, right? And so the goal is to convene a list of people. When I worked with you all on the community assessment, I said, okay, we need to talk to Black people. Okay, we need to talk to Black people that are in churches. All right, now we need to talk to Black people. So we targeted those groups and asked them the questions. How do you feel about a skate park? As a Black youth, would you use the skate park? Do you think it's whatever the questions are? So that's that. So then, then comes the question, now we've answered the internal question. I think these people will be impacted potentially. Then that's where we say, how will they be engaged? Will we do a survey? Will we do focus groups? Will we do phone calls? Will we go to schools, PTA meetings? So we know how we will engage them. So then when you get to question 4, that's where we're now asking the group. We've convened these focus groups or whatever they're going to be, and we tell them what the program is, and then we ask them, what do you think about this? How do you feel about this? Would you participate in this? And then when we come back to the table, we say, wow, this is how it's being perceived by the group. We've collected the data, and this is how it's being perceived by them.
So
And then we begin to reshape the policy or be more inclusive in the policy based on what we thought, but how they perceive it. Because, they could say, I could care less about a skate park in the Black community. So we can come back and say, oh, by then it's perceived to not be an issue. An example was with William Eason, right? We went and what we came back with was the Black community didn't perceive this to be, an issue. Does that help?
It helps a lot. And I wonder if it's fair then to say that some of these questions are to be answered internally, and some of them are very much not to be answered internally. They're to be answered, as a result of engaging with the groups who help answer the questions for themselves. And so is it like 1 through 3 is internally directed? And then it looks like at least 4, 5, and 6 are, answered in Congress with the groups that we're talking about. And then, when we get to 7, where it says based on the above responses, again, the responses from these groups, what are possible revisions? Is that an internal question, or is that still sort of an engaging with the community question? Because what you just said, Pat, is very helpful. And now I'm kind of trying to bring it back to, because as JC said, and other people have said, it's a great goal to have these questions be so clear that they don't just make sense to us, but that they make sense to anyone who just looks at these questions. They need to be, push here, dummy, like clear, level clear.
No, it's just the opposite. Because if you don't want to simplify this so that it becomes a handout for people just to fill in and go about their work. This is outlining a process.
Right. Well, I just mean clear in terms of, as Elaine said earlier, it's like, well, wait, aren't we starting to do the work ourselves of who could be affected? That use of could in terms of like, let's use our own brains to think about it. And there's a place for that, but it's also not ultimately questions that we can answer for other people. So that's why I'm trying to be really clear about the execution of the process, which is simply, who are we asking these questions of? Some of them are internal, and then some of them are, answered with the groups that we're engaging with, right?
It's going to depend on the situation.
Well, it's the process. So this is never meant to be, for example, with the skate park, let's just say Brian brought that forward. It's not meant for him to sit out at a desk and say, oh, it's meant for him to answer that question. First of all, number 1, what's the policy that gets attached to the policy proposal, right? What is the proposal? And then the second question, yes, I very much want Brian, but the group to ask, what are the potential racial disparities or racial impacts even, but let's not change any language. So that simply gives the board, the REDI committee, it gives them some sense. Here's the policy we're talking about, and here are the groups we want to focus on talking to. And then it comes back, and you all are going to have to help guide them in this process. How will they be engaged? Right? And that's where the REDI committee is. You're going to have to help them along the way. And we can even put together, a packet that says, how will they be engaged by focus groups, by mailer, by, personal contact, by phone, whatever that might be. The whole point here is that we want to ensure as an organization, as the park district, that we are not bypassing people. that we are engaging them. So some of it, the guidelines, Brian would not propose the policy, tell us what the potential disparities are, and then tell us how to engage them. Brian doesn't know how to engage the Black community yet, right? That's where you all have begun to build a database of contacts and information, so that we know, oh, remember, we can go to the Foster Senior Club where there's Black seniors, or we can go to the Evanston clergy where there are Black clergy. That's how we'll engage. So this is it's not a one and done. There's not supposed to be one eye looking at this, because that allows us to keep our bias, right? We don't even know we have bias. When I came in and said to you all, hey, there's the Black senior group, and by the way, there's Evanston Own It. Oh, and I'm going to go here. Oh, and I'm going to knock on some doors. You didn't know who to be in contact with. If you ask me about seniors, no, is there the Levy Center? I don't know. So we've got to help along the way build this, so that people understand how to engage people. How will they be engaged in the process? And then so I don't know how to resolve unless we reorganize. I don't know how to resolve the question you all have, because it's a legitimate question. So should it, you just don't want to throw this out there and have people fill it in. That it's not, then you fit, the whole process has failed.
Could it be something as simple as just at the beginning of question 4? Could it just need something that shows that we're talking about a process unfolding over time? For example, something as simple as saying, then how does the policy program, so that there's a temporal break there.
Yes. And that's what I said, maybe perhaps some more sort of instruction.
I mean, I can also do like I can also do things like that and put internal and external. I don't know if you all like how that looks aesthetically, but if that adds clarity to the lens questions.
Or the other piece that we can do is, right, it's questions 4 through it's questions 4, 5, and 6 are the ones, those answers should be coming from the community, not from us. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's just a matter of a half sentence, questions 4 through 6.
No, that's not accurate.
Okay.
So question 4 is definitely a community question, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're asking them, we're talking to them about the policy and getting their feedback. Question 4B is what we do with the data we collect. We come back internally and say, how does the group, what were the results of our data collection? So that's an internal piece.
I see what you're saying. It doesn't
and internal piece as well is, does the PPP improve or worsen or make no change to existing racial disparities? And does it result in systemic change that address institutional racism? That's an internal question. The benefits I'm sorry. We collect that data from the group. How will this impact you? You see what I'm saying? And so they give us that information. We document it. Again, remember, the point of documenting that is so that we can collect all the data, put it in one place. The board comes back and they now say, we've used a racial equity lens. And based on that, what we have found out is that this is very badly perceived. And here are the recommended revisions.
Do we get there by flipping the order of the two sentences in paragraph 4? How is it, so it would start out, how is it perceived by the groups?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then and that would just be moved to the beginning of 4. Yeah.
if you're going to do that, you just have to put the policy, practice, program, decision part at the beginning instead of saying it.
Mhm. Right.
And also, before I forget to say this, Natalie, when we reframed something, let's see which one it was. Never mind. I think it's part of question 4. It had a random B in there left over
Took it
from
out.
the wording.
I
Okay.
saw it. I took it
Yeah.
out.
And also to answer your question from before, Natalie, when you wrote external, I mean, I like that because I think that it's not super clear as the questions are written which questions are directed at whom. And maybe people disagree with me there. Maybe when we get our extensive training on how to actually use the lens, some of the stuff will become more intuitive or more clear. And I don't want to go overboard with formatting or wording or anything. But it isn't until this discussion right now that it was clear to me personally that 1, 2, 3 are internal questions, 4 and some others are, questions we answer in the process of engagement with other groups. So I'm just answering your question that I like some visual cue, no matter how we do it.
What if it? I can change spec. So just tell me. What if we put something?
Can I say something real fast? I think I'm understanding Dr. Effiam's point about it not being right. If it's too cookie cutter and you can just go through the form and not think too much, the form's not doing its job. And I Martha, I very much understand your point of view too, of like getting a better understanding of what direction information is supposed to flow for each question.
It's such a huge conceptual difference, and the way you answer it affects everything that comes after that. It's such a huge difference whether we're answering these questions ourselves or whoever fills these roles after we're no longer in these positions, versus having an understanding of for which questions you're actually engaging other groups.
Right. I absolutely agree with you, but I think the piece that I had forgotten about until Dr. Effiam just reframed it for me is that no one's using this lens without the training, right? It's not like we're going to be handing this piece of paper next to the next group and they just have to follow. We're not giving them a recipe.
Right.
Like I forgot about that piece of it, right? Like I'm thinking so much about handing documents over, but it's not just documents. We're handing over the training too.
And that's the big piece is you have to organizationally, you're going to have to train every staff member. The board's going to have to be trained.
All new REDI committee members.
You can still, it's up to you all if you want to clarify. I think that's an internal question for you all to answer. But I want to, JC, thank you, because what I really need the organization to hear is that this is not a form. This is a process, and the questions guide the process. And people need to understand that. So, the board needs to know, hey, if you're going to bring a new policy forward, you've got to have the form that says, what's the policy practice? That's all they need to answer that question. But they need to fill in, we're going to be reviewing skate park. And that's the beginning of the equity lens. And that's how that triggers the rest of the process. So at the board meeting or at the REDI committee meeting, whatever it is, Brian's brought forth this policy, you can ask the question, what are the potential racial disparities here? At the next REDI committee meeting, you should be answering that question. Hey, they're going to be talking about skateboard park. What are the potential racial disparities? So it is a process, and it's important that process not get lost by having a form that can be filled out. Does that help?
It does. You know what I think? I think that the master list does not have that internal external, and that we all print ourselves a copy and write internal external, right? Like we can take our notes on our copies as we go through the training and make whatever adjustments we need. And then if we decide in the future that we need to add more direction to this, then that's something that we can do. I'm reluctant to add those pieces because I'm afraid that if those pieces are in there, it is going to feel like, oh, I can just walk away with this paper and do this. I don't want anyone having that feeling at this point when we don't even really know what we're doing.
But can I make a suggestion? I think because listening to you all and hearing what your struggle is, I and don't kill me, but I'm your consultant. I really think we should outline the process and not the questions. So as I explained it to you, to be able to say step number 1 is fill out this form that every time you want to bring forth a policy or review it, fill that out. Step number 2 is to identify the racial disparities, or have REDI committee, however you want to do that, identify those racial disparities. Process step number 3 would be engage. How will you engage this particular group?
Turn the questions into commands.
Or just at least help, instead of questions that people can go to and say, okay, I just want to ask this question, is to outline that process. And to even say, work with REDI committee to identify how to engage this population.
Is that a separate document, Dr. Effiam, or is that part of this racial lens document?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Is that a separate document that we should create, like the process, or should that be a part of the racial lens?
I think because there's so much confusion over what a racial equity lens is, and listening to you all, if you put this up on the website, you say, hey, this is a racial equity lens that we operate by, it's not going to be clear. And you all have clearly identified that. It's not going to be clear to folks. And that's why I said, perhaps you outline the process.
I agree completely, Pat. And I think that that's really helpful because I think some of us, and myself included, if something's a question, the obvious action to take is to answer it. And sometimes answering a question as though you're filling out a form is an overly simplified way to go about doing this. And it's not the right way. If we look at it more like these are prompts, like if you were to have to write in a test and you're given a prompt and then you really have to flesh it out yourself, it's not as simple as the answer is B, fill in the circle. So, I mean, instead of racial equity lens questions, do we want to officially name it racial equity lens process?
I think so. And probably, this is clearly, I take some responsibility for this because I do know that organizations don't always know what a racial equity lens is. And Dan asked the question last time or sometime, did we apply a racial equity lens? You want to be able to pull out a paper and say, yes, we did. And that's because we followed this process. So listening to you all as an objector outsider, I hear the confusion. I hear well, how do we do this? And JC, you're right. When everybody's gone, we want that process to be documented. We don't want the questions to be done. We want the process to be documented. So I think we go back to, racial equity lens process. And you could say something fun, like applying a racial equity lens. So that, people know, okay, when we said we applied a racial equity lens, we document that process.
Well, I think a lot of people who don't know what a racial equity lens is, literally take the word lens and think of it like you're looking through a certain glass and, oh, look, you just pick up that glass and you look through it and now you see everything differently. That's not what it is. It's not that simple. And it's not a simple act of turning on a light switch, circling a bubble on a test. It's a process. It's, questions that are supposed to be complex and multifaceted, and then a process of answering them. So I think it's essential that we call it a process instead of questions. A process is something you do, and there's steps to it. Questions are just you answer them, and then you're done. And
that's what I said. Dan was the last one at the meeting to say, "Did we apply a racial equity lens?" They just think, "Did we ask some Black people?" Right? That's not what applying a racial equity lens is. And like I said, I don't want just to get boiled down to that simply. And so I think that's the way to go for you all listening.
I agree. I agree for a few different. I think it explains it better. I think it will be more transparent to the public. I also think that it will make it seem doable for other organizations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think it'll make it really obtainable, which I think is a really neat, hopefully byproduct of what we do. And all of that being said, we're not going to have this ready to present to the board for next week. And it's 7:45. Do we want to call our meeting for today and then get back to work on this in 2 weeks?
Well, what I might recommend is that Natalie, you, JC, and I get together and outline the process.
Sounds great.
We can outline the process that way before the next meeting. And Shama, I hope you'll capture this in the minutes. This is my recommended route, is that we get together, if you have time now, your plate is full, but that we get together, outline the process. As soon as we have that done, we shoot that out to the group. You all get to review the process and give any feedback before the next meeting, so that by the time we come to the next meeting, we have clarified and we have a process that's outlined. And then we can still put the questions, at the bottom or something. But I think if we wait till the next meeting to hash all this out, you see this as tough work. So I think that we can outline the process, and then we can send it out individually to you all for your reading, clarification, to make sure, no, that doesn't make sense to me, whatever that is. So that by the time we come back for the next meeting, we have a document that everyone will have read and simply needs to vote on. Read, commented on, and then can vote on.
I think that's great, and I just want to like highlight that in the original, total document that started with this, REDI statement, racial equity approach, charter. When you first start talking about the racial equity lens in this document, it starts with an explanation of, what it even is and kind of like how it does what it does, why we use it, by utilizing racial equity lens, and then it was 1 through 6 for that. And I think we've gotten so deep into the, perhaps excessive analysis of exactly how the questions are worded and formatted, that we've forgotten about these chunks of text that come before it that are absolutely part of the bigger picture of the racial equity lens. And it does say racial equity lens is a set of questions, but
Yes.
then it goes on to say that will guide the decision-making process for evaluating the potential impacts of existing and future policies, programs, and practices. So that kind of helps put it back into the frame of the questions are just part of the process. They help guide the process. They're, questions are kind of nice because they're explicit. And so it's asking something and it points you in a certain direction. But a lot of these questions, and I get that we should stop, but if we were to continue, we could say, instead of does the policy, program, or decision produce any intentional benefits or unintended, blah, 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 you could say identify how the PPP does blah, 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 and just changing the wording to not necessarily commands, but I agree with that characterization, more like, here's what you do, instead of just answer this question. It shouldn't ever be just a yes or no. I mean, that wasn't the point of the questions, right?
And if you remember, my hesitancy in handing out the questions in advance of anything was because, if you remember what I said, is these are not things you can pick and choose and say, well, I like this one, I don't like that one. And I think we've come to an understanding of what that meant now, is that, I understand. You can't skip steps in a process. You can't cut out a step in a process. Either you accept the process or you don't.
Right, because they relate to each other. Yeah.
Right. And so I think this was a good learning curve for us. And
just so that we're all clear, Pat, what exactly are you saying you're going to do in terms of outlining the process? Are we getting an additional piece beyond what we have already? Or
is to take what we have and to say step number 1. And I can't remember, what is the process? So we'll put, for the process, when you're considering any decision, please document that on this particular form.
Mhm.
And so you can go in and start the process and say, hey, we just want the board to understand, or whoever's bringing forth the idea, we just want them to know we need this question answered. You need to answer the question. That opens the door now for us to apply a racial equity lens. So step number 2 then, and Natalie's the wordsmith, which is why I said Natalie. Step number 2 then is, what was the second question? It's late, I'm sorry. Step number.
What groups? Well, I'm looking
That's
at the
right.
old copy, but I have what groups experience.
So we would say, for example, identify what racial groups might be affected by this. Right. And
Yeah.
so then, and that can be with the REDI committee's help or whatever. Step number 3 in the process is how will we engage these people? Is number 3 is to identify ways to engage this community. And then you can go and say focus group, like I said, whatever that process wants to be. So step number 4 is then this is the way we engage them, and this is the feedback we got. So more of, like I said, just laying out what the process is.
That it feels so much more solid to me that way. I really like that idea. Okay, so that will be the plan.
Can I just ask, Elaine, can I ask you, because you brought some good concerns. What are you thinking about this?
Well, I'm thinking that that makes good sense. What I was talking about earlier was trying to fuse that process into the questions. But I like the idea of taking a step back and setting it out as a process that is focused on certain issues, that presently are in the form of questions that are being considered. But instead of questions that the committee is considering, what you're proposing, and I like it very much, is that this is that the questions that we were talking about initially become part of the engagement, and is something that will actually that the groups that are being consulted and conferred with are actually going to have a role in shaping what those issues are going to be. They're going to be raising the issues, and I like that. I think that makes good sense.
Okay. And if you think about it, we've been together for what, 1.5 years or something, and we're that conflicted and confused. Think about people who haven't had any training and want to go on the website and just look at the questions. So as long as the group feels good about it, we can reshape those.
Yeah, good.
I'd like to reiterate the process that we're going to go through with this. So Dr. Effiam, you and Natalie and JC are going to get together and write it and then send it to each of us. And we should review it and give any feedback before the next meeting and come to the next meeting ready to vote on it.
Well, okay, for open meeting.
And that's what we were supposed to do with this.
Well, for Open Meeting Act purposes, Natalie, if you send it to each of us and you send it individually and we don't reply all, we just reply to, anybody who replies to Natalie and JC, no.
No.
This is
We have Sharma. That's what Sharma's
for.
So Sharma will be sending all this out on our behalf.
Yeah.
And you will reply back to Sharma. And Sharma will forward that information on, any feedback on to Natalie and JC and myself.
And so the product that we get before the next meeting, the last product that we get before the next meeting, is something that we should review and come to the next meeting ready to vote, not have an hour discussion on it.
Right, because you see how tedious it is, right? So that's the point. So review it, to give your feedback, and then to take that feedback and incorporate into the document. So when we come to the last meeting, we will have had a document that you all had time to review in your own personal time, and so we'll get out the time back. and then you should be ready. You may have another comment or something, but it pretty much it should be a completed document.
Okay.
That way we can get it into the board's hands by their next meeting.
Okay. Because
That's
that's actually what we said we were going to do tonight. We were supposed to get a copy of it, review it on our own, and come tonight ready to vote.
That is true, Debbie, but I have to say I'm really excited about this change. I think this.
No, I agree, but we could. But I'm just saying we need to do what we say we're going to do in the meeting. You know what I mean? We need to follow the process that we say we're going to do when it's written in the minutes.
Yes, but I also think that because we were following OMA and we didn't have someone else to do the emails, that piece of doing that I think was more difficult previously.
Right.
So now that we have this in place, I am super excited. Let's make sure we put it to use.
Yeah, Shama, it's all on you.
Natalie, now I have thrown you into some work. Do you have the capacity?
Do I have a choice to have the capacity? Yes, it's fine.
Okay.
It is what it is. It's fine. We're going to meet. It's going to be excellent. We're going to get that out. We're going to vote on it.
And we will have our equity lens in place.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm genuinely excited to go to the board next week and tell them that we had like this epiphany. I'm like genuinely excited to go share this with them. I think this is a really big, important moment. I just want to acknowledge that. All right. On that note, right. Well, I don't do citizen comments again, right? Oh, wait. We have a very important order of business. Shama, thank you so much. I mean, we kind of went through an informal introduction earlier, but you know, Shama's our person now. She's going to help us out. Thank you so much. Thank you for being willing to do this. We're so excited to have you. And I look forward to learning along with you all these things about open meetings and, you know, Robert's rules and all that.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be this person, and thank you for letting me be a useful fly on the wall, I hope.
Not a fly on the wall.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Can I ask, we have been referring to ourselves as the REDI committee, and we are, and much like you all addressed me formally in a meeting, I would suggest that when we're talking about the REDI committee publicly, like on the board agenda, we should say racial equity, diversity, inclusion committee. And I simply say that because when they were putting together the job description for Shama, Charles said, "Yeah, can you tell us what that is?" And we are so accustomed to saying it already that people don't really know what that is, and we do really want to keep before people that we're doing racial equity work.
JC, will you send that to me as a formal request? I sent the agenda out today, so will you just reply to me with that? And I'll update it.
To change it on the agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Speaking of the agenda, I have a small piece of new business that I'd like to raise.
Yeah.
This is an issue that came up a couple of years ago that I was very concerned about at the time, and it's resurfaced. And I'd like to point out that there has been some disturbing sidewalk graffiti as well as flyers appearing around the community. I noticed, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that there is what I regard as a threatening, some threatening graffiti on the sidewalk right outside the Park District on Elmwood, right outside the fence over by the play area. And I raised it at the time. The Park District talked about it with the police. I spoke with the police at the time, and it concerns me very much that this has happened numerous times, that there have been these graffiti by the park, and that is just so very close to a religious congregation that's across the street, and it is what can I say? It's written in hostile language that borders on the violent and sometimes is violent. So I've noticed it. It looks to me like it's back. It's a process. It's an issue that concerned me at the time, and it continues to concern me.
Where is this exactly, Elaine?
It was on the sidewalk. I don't know if it's still there. I didn't go past there today, but I was there. It was yesterday or the day before, and it was. These are it's left wing. We're not talking about right wing white supremacists, but the language is violent, and it frequently talks about religious groups. For example, calling Christians. It talks about missionaries, colonialism, and it talks about it in very violent terms. And my concern with it is not that there's criticism or issues being raised, but it is the violence of the rhetoric.
Mhm.
And I've raised this before. I have I have on my phone quite a collection of pieces of related graffiti that have been appearing around the neighborhood, and it keeps focusing around this corner, this area, right here by the
Where
park.
is it? The sidewalk where? On
It was on Elmwood, right over by where the skate park, the skate park implements were placed. Not the basketball court is next to it. This is the area that's right by the fence. And I didn't take a photograph of it, but I did note it, and it's.
and you called
No,
Brian?
I haven't taken it further this time around, but a couple of years ago, I remember walking out on September 11th, 911, and there was some of this graffiti, and it was right by our house. Our house number is 911, and across the street from the Park District, of course. And I talked with Brian about it at the time. And some of the language is very extreme, and it expresses a lot of hostility toward Christians. And violence can occur in the context of a Christian congregation just as easily as any other. So it was something I did raise it with the police. I spoke with a number of people. Brian spoke with the police. And what they told me at the time, and I was not comforted by the reaction of the police, which was simply that, oh well, this is left wing, not right wing.
So
Yeah, exactly. And there were the graffiti include sometimes there are things that are anti-Semitic. There are images of the Klan. Little hooded figures, and the police told me at the time that they had identified, or they seemed to have thought they had identified the person that was doing all of this, and they said that she was going to be gone soon, and indeed she didn't say why, whether she were going to be institutionalized somewhere or was moving away or what the issue was, but anyway, she was going to be gone soon. And in fact, the graffiti disappeared, but it's back.
who's the alderman? What ward is that? Does anybody know?
This is
It's the eighth
the
word.
ninth ward.
Oh, it's the ninth word.
Ward. Well, I think we should contact Cicely.
Yeah.
Also.
What is it written in, Elaine? Is it spray paint or is it chalk or what are they?
Well, yes, it's chalk, but she also, if you take a look at her writing style, you'll see that there are posters all over the community, or flyers, I guess I would say.
Huh.
They're pasted up on phone poles. Sometimes they're frequently over by the L, and they're like I said, the language is virulent. And it disturbs me, and especially the placement. There's so many of them around the Park District, and sometimes they seem to be prompted. I've watched this for a while. There's somebody that goes around and puts angels, chalk drawings of angels on the street. And that seems to trigger some of these responses. There are hearts on angels that some artist is doing that, but this seems to be something that disturbs the graffiti artist. And I'm saying she because that seemed to be what the police were saying. So oftentimes there'll be a reaction, what can I say? And what I regard as an overheated reaction to the simple image of an angel. Now,
I think
my concern is independent of the politics of the person. It's the violence of the expression that worries me.
right. Well, if you're left, you can't be violent. Oh, I don't think so.
That was the reaction of the
We
police.
as the park district should, Natalie, or I think we should call Cicely
Yeah, good
and
idea.
tell her what's going on, get her involved in this.
And as I said, I do have quite a collection. I did speak with the last time around. I did speak with the ADL. I'm trying to remember whom else I contacted. But the law enforcement did get contacted. I think Brian took it to them because he had some events coming up. The park district had some events coming up, and there was some real concern that there could be something could happen.
People or whatever. Yeah.
I think in addition to contacting Cecily, the REDI committee should make a formal report to the board, so that it goes in a formal record, and also outline, what steps the REDI committee has taken, like contacting the alderman, bringing this before the board. So learning how, for you all as a REDI committee, how can you formally respond to some of these things? That would be one of the ways is to put this in your report, JC. Perhaps if Elaine is even free to come and talk about it, because she clearly talks very passionate. She's seen that, and let them know that we're passing this on into their hands.
So then someone on the board, or we should say that we suggest that Brian talk to Cecily or Natalie. I mean, so that the suggestion isn't out there, but it just gets lost. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Well, Brian picked right up on it. I appreciated
Okay.
that. He saw the potential, the potential gravity and threat of the situation, and he collected a number of images and got good
Okay.
quality photographs made that that he took on to various people.
Okay.
Elaine,
Sorry, Natalie, go ahead.
Elaine, do you have his email address?
Who's?
Brian's.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. If you have a minute, just shoot him an email and let him know that it's happening again.
Yeah.
And he can call whoever he called the last time and at least make sure that everyone's aware.
Right.
I don't know if Evanston still does this, but they used to have the community officer that was like assigned to different. Not anymore.
not in that ward.
Oh,
Well, in the 8th ward, I know they have Tasha is the
Mhm.
Well, maybe
She's
these
a new
two
one?
do it.
Mhm.
Okay.
is the, what do you call it? The beat. I don't know what you call it, but she's sort of their officer. I don't know who it is in the 9th ward, but I think we should, the 8th ward should be involved too. I mean, it's not, if it's around the parks, I don't know who do you, Natalie, know who
No, I just know Tasha.
huh?
I just know Officer Tasha.
Yeah, she's with the 8th ward.
Yeah.
But-
I haven't met if the 9th ward has somebody that does that. I have not met them. I will say our Youth in the Parks guys will be out starting in June. So they'll be there during the day. So if somebody were to, do something like that. Also, if you see it, let us know. You can text me or Brian, and we'll have we can clean it off. So
we should give the people who go to the parks. We should give them a heads up, so if they see it, they know to report back.
Good.
Okay, I've got a little list of what we just talked about too.
Elaine, do you want to be more explicit about what kinds of language is being used, and is the violence coming from the language or the pictures or both? I
Oh.
haven't seen any of this myself, so I don't know exactly what we're even talking about.
Well, maybe the best thing to do would be to send around some of the images that I have, from before. I don't have the most recent one, but it was of a piece with those, with those earlier images. It speaks of how, I don't even know how to characterize it. I'm sorry. It talks about colonialism, missionaries, Christianity, as being well, if I say oppressive, that doesn't really communicate the anger of these graffiti, and a lot of her missives that are posted around the community have images, like, for example, there'll be the Klan will be depicted, and so and it's done with little like accent marks, little figures like that, and there'll be maybe 20 of them, a large number of them. It's very, very angry imagery.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And I'll add that to my board report for next week. And
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for hearing me out. It's worried me for a long time.
I will shoot you an email to remind you, but if you're able to come so that you can describe, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, what's the date of the next meeting?
It's next Thursday.
Thursday at 7:30.
Yeah, I think I can do that. Well, I'll make a point. Of course.
And she can probably speak during citizen comment, JC.
Okay.
Elaine can, and then you can follow up in your report.
With the recommendations. Okay, awesome.
That's fine.
Can I make a closing? I assume we're closing. Just because I am your racial equity consultant, I think it's important you hear from me directly, because it's gone community-wide. And apparently my name has been associated with some dark, what is it?
Money group.
What is it? Dark money group?
Dark money group.
And apparently it was something went out with my name saying I was part of the LLC that was created, and that this is in the reason it's a racial equity issue is because of some of the elected officials, people who are running for office, are now saying that they're being racially targeted. And for whatever reason, my name, there were 5 of us whose names were associated with it, and it went public yesterday, and apparently it's going to be in Evanston now tomorrow. The mayor's going to come out and make a statement that we are not associated with the group, but one of the people who was named in there actually has gotten an attorney because our names have just been put out there. It doesn't affect me at all, but I just wanted you all to know, if you hear that I'm associated with this group, please know I know nothing, absolutely nothing about it. And apparently an LLC was formed, and I was put on as one of the officers legally. I know nothing about that at all, and I just want you all to know that. So if it does come out, your racial equity consultant is not being a racist. I just want you to know.
Oh my gosh.
Pat, I really appreciate you saying that. Are you not aware that an article already went out in the Patch a couple weeks ago?
Yeah. I had no idea.
I actually meant to call you about that because the article, it was very poorly written, and I was completely unclear as to what was happening, and then to have your name put in there in that association, everything seemed backwards, and I was going to call you and ask you what it was. Life got crazy, and
I know nothing.
I will tell you that Matt Rogers, who's involved with
my name on it, I knew nothing about that. I didn't pay any attention because I was like, I didn't sign anything. But then, like I said, for it to come out, yes, publicly, that we formed this LLC and that we're raising dark money against these people, these elected officials. I know nothing about it. I don't even live in Evanston. So just, yeah.
And Matt Rogers' name was on it too. And, you know, he's done some work for Ridgeville. He also, nothing to do with it.
What?
Yeah.
Somebody has to fill me in.
The piece that came out today, which was awful, and it was put out by the group that I'm supposedly attacking, names me and names all of us and says, you know, we're very wealthy, well-connected individuals.
You didn't know you were so wealthy.
I didn't know, or well-connected either. So,
God, I'm so sorry.
Oh, for me, there's no issue for me at all. I mean, I'm not even involved in Evanston politics or anything like that, but because we're the Racial Equity Committee and I'm your consultant, I thought it was important for you all to know that, and so when they come at you about your consultant, you can say, no, she has absolutely nothing to do with that.
I'm sorry that you have to deal with that.
It's okay.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, maybe we should talk about if our equity consultant is a racist. We could use our process.
Make a motion to not talk about that.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Night.
How about that?
To adjourn the meeting.
I like that. I think we're good. Am I allowed a second?
Sure.
Yeah.
I second. I second adjourning. I make a motion. I second it.
Shama, if you'll just say all of our names out loud, we'll say yes, and you're free.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not muted anymore. Okay, good. Yes. Okay. So Debbie motioned and JC seconds, and Natalie Sully,
Yes.
Martha Gaines,
Yes.
Debbie Braun.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Elaine Siegel
Yes.
and JC Herman.
Yes.
Good job.
Okay.
Good job, Shama.
Yay, Sean.
Y'all are funny.
Hey, Shama, you want to run for the Ridgeville board?
You're so funny. You
But
know,
we lose our secretary.
you know how much my neighbor would approve of that, right? Right?
You know who Shama's neighbor is? I mean, the meeting's over, right? Yeah.